The sky over New Tegu was the color of dirty iron. It was always a little dim on Taurus 3, the sun a cool, distant coin. But today the shadow was wrong. It wasn't a cloud. It was a jagged, ugly shape that blotted out the light as it passed over the mining colony. Lee Yuna stood outside the greenhouse, her hands still dirty from repairing a soil filter. She squinted upward. The thing in the sky was not one of their bulk haulers. It was angular and cruel-looking, like a piece of broken glass. A low hum vibrated in her teeth before the first sonic booms cracked the air. Sirens began to wail, a sound the colony had only ever tested. People spilled from the prefab habitats and the processing plant, their faces tilted up, confused and afraid. Yuna, her brother, Kim Jun, ran toward her, his lab coat flapping. The long-range scans. They said nothing. What is that? Trouble, Yuna said, her voice flat. She wiped her hands on her trousers, her eyes never leaving the ship. It was moving toward the main lift, the giant structure that carried or from the deep pits to the surface. Get to the community bunker. Now. But the new seed cultures. Now, June. He heard the tone. It was the one she used when there was no room for argument. It was the voice she had learned years ago, in a different life in the asteroid belt. He nodded and ran to help others. The alien ship did not land. It hovered. A bay door opened like a dark mouth and figures dropped out. They fell the last 50 feet and hit the ground with heavy, earth-shaking thuds. They were massive, taller than any man, covered in dense, gray fur streaked with black. They stood on reverse-jointed legs, with broad chests and powerful arms that ended in cruel claws. Their heads were wolf-like, with elongated muzzles full of sharp teeth and intelligent, cold yellow eyes. They wore scraps of armor and carried brutal, blocky weapons. The largest of them, a full head taller than the others, strode forward. A metal band around his thick neck glowed softly. A translator. He did not look at the mining rig's controls or the storage silos. He walked directly to the central power coupling of the main lift. He planted his feet, raised his weapon, and fired. The sound was not a laser's whine or a bullet's crack. It was a concussive thump that punched through the air. The machinery exploded in a shower of molten metal and sparks. The great lift groaned, sagged, and died. The message was clear. This was not a theft. It was a breaking. The lead alien turned. His pack fanned out behind him, growls rumbling in their chests. The humans of New Tegu had gathered in a fearful cluster near the mess hall. Security Chief Park Miho stood in front, an old kinetic rifle in his hands, looking very small. The alpha beast moved toward them. Each step was deliberate, heavy. The colonists shrank back. He stopped a dozen paces away, his yellow eyes sweeping over them with open contempt. They settled on Lee Yuna. She had not run to the cluster. She had simply walked forward, placing herself between the alien and a small group of children who had been playing near the greenhouse. A deep, guttural noise came from the alien's chest. The translator band around his neck flickered, and a voice, synthesized and harsh, boomed across the plaza. You are weak. You are prey. This world is forfeit. You will serve. He took one more step, his shadow falling over Yuna. He stared down at her, this small, furless creature in stained work clothes. He wanted her fear. He needed to see it to cement his dominance. He drew a breath, his chest expanding, and let out a roar that was both animal and mechanical. The translator amplified it, making the windows shake. Kneel, human. The command hung in the air, violent and absolute. The children behind Yuna whimpered. One of the colonists sobbed. Park Miho's knuckles were white on his rifle, but he knew firing it would be a death sentence for everyone. All eyes were on Yuna. She did not kneel. She did not tremble. She lifted her chin and met the alpha's predatory gaze. Her face was calm, too calm for the moment. It was the calm of someone who has seen the abyss before and is no longer surprised by it. A faint, weary smile touched the corners of her mouth. It wasn't a smile of joy, but of cold recognition. It was the look of a problem solver facing a very, very ugly problem. She said nothing. Her silence was louder than a scream. Her refusal was in the straight line of her spine, in the unblinking stare she gave the monster. The Alpha, Gorak, felt a flicker of something unexpected. Not anger yet, but a spike of intrigue. This prey was not behaving correctly. Should be cowering. His lips pulled back from his teeth in a snarl that was almost a grin. The defiance was amusing. It would make the breaking more satisfying. You have one cycle of this sun, the translator snarled, his eyes locked on Yuna's. Submit. Give us your food, your shelter, your labor. Kneel and serve. Or. His gaze swept the crowd. We will cull you like the herd you are. With a final, contemptuous snort, he turned. His pack followed, their heavy footsteps crunching on the gravel. They headed toward the colony's main storage depot, claiming it as their own. The moment they were out of sight, the held breath of the colony rushed out in a wave of panic and cries. People surged forward, asking questions, shouting. Yuna turned her back on the direction the aliens had gone. She looked at the faces of her people, at her brother's pale, worried expression, at Chief Miho's despair. The faint, cold smile was gone. In its place was a grim, focused intensity. Everyone, she said, her voice not loud, but cutting through the noise. To the bunker. Now, we have work to do. She looked once more at the ruined mining lift, then at the ominous shape of the alien ship in the sky. They had broken the symbol of the colony's work. She would have to break the symbol of their strength. The community bunker smelled of cold concrete, sweat, and fear. Flickering emergency lights threw long shadows on the walls. 50 colonists huddled on benches and cots, their faces drawn. The children were quiet, too quiet, clinging to their parents. The only sounds were whispered prayers and the low hum of the air recycler. Kim Jun stood near the small medical station, organizing supplies with shaky hands. He was a thinker, a man of soil and science. The raw violence of the aliens was a language he did not speak. His mind raced with terrible calculations of their food stores, their limited power, their utter lack of weapons. Park Miho, the security chief, slammed a fist onto a metal table. The bang made everyone jump. We have to fight. We let them walk in, break our lift, and we just hide? We have a few rifles, some mining charges. We can make a stand. And die with honor? Lee Yuna's voice was calm from the corner. She sat at a small terminal, scrolling through old geological survey maps. The blue light lit her face from below. That is what they expect. That is what they want. A stand-up fight. It would be over in minutes. Then what? Miho shot back, his face red. We kneel? We become their slaves? You saw them, Yuna. They are beasts. Yuna finally looked away from the screen. Her eyes were tired, but there was a sharpness in them, like flint. I saw them. Big, strong, confident. They see strength only as muscle and loud noises. They think we are weak because we are not like them. She turned the terminal screen around. It showed a complex, three-dimensional map of the moon's crust around New Tegu. A section was highlighted in pulsing red. Our strength is different. It is here. June walked over, peering at the map. The silica caves? Yuna, that area is unstable. It was marked for restricted access. The seismic surveys showed massive hollows, brittle support structures. It's a death trap. Yes, Yuna said, a single, simple word. She zoomed in on the cave network. It was a labyrinth of jagged tunnels and vast chambers, made of crystalline silica that could be as sharp as glass and as fragile as sugar. It is a death trap for anyone who does not know it. For anyone who is big and heavy and stomps around. A slow understanding began to dawn on June's face, followed by horror. Miho just looked confused. You want to lead them in there? June asked quietly. I want them to choose to go in there, Yuna corrected. They need to believe it is their idea, their victory. She pointed to a large chamber on the map, marked with warning symbols. They will want shelter, a den. Our main food storage building is here, right next to this cave entrance. It is the strongest building above ground. They will take it. So we give them our food? a woman cried from the benches. We starve. We moved the real food stores weeks ago, when the deep scans picked up that strange debris field in high orbit, Una said, her tone matter-of-fact. I thought it might be pirates. The storage building only holds basic nutrient blocks, the ones we use for the organic recyclers. They are terrible to eat. Let them have that den. Miho shook his head. This is madness. Even if they go into the caves, then what? We hide in here until they leave. No, Una said, her focus returning to the map. We make the caves hate them. We use what we have. June, your work on the low-frequency growth lights for the underground farms, can you modify them? Can you make a sound, a vibration that is painful to sensitive hearing? Something that causes disorientation, headaches. June blinked, his scientist's mind engaging despite the fear. Yes. Yes, probably. Their ear structure is likely very different. We could calibrate the emitters. It would not hurt us, but for them, it could be like constant thunder inside their heads. Good. Take Subin. Get all the lights and emitters you can. She turned to Miho. Chief, all the industrial lubricant, the slicking agent we use for the drill heads. Not in barrels. In dispersal packs like the ones for dust control. We need to make floors and smooth rock into ice. Miho began to see a glimmer of the plan. They are heavy. If they lose their footing. Exactly. And Subin, Una called. The young communications operator stepped forward. The old mining drones in the south shed. Can you get them running on a remote signal? Can we strap small charges to them? Not to attack, just to tickle the wrong rock formations. Subin, who had been pale with terror, now nodded vigorously. A task. Something to do. I can make them work. Short range only, but yes. We are not soldiers, Una said, standing up and addressing the whole room. Her voice was still quiet, but it filled the space. We are miners, gardeners, engineers, so we will not fight like soldiers. We will fight like miners. We will make the ground itself our ally. We will be ghosts in the rock. Our goal is not to kill them all. Our goal is to break their leader's will. To show him his strength is useless here. To make him afraid of the dark. She looked at the faces around her, seeing the fear slowly being edged out by a desperate, grim hope. They gave us one day, Una said. We will use it. We will give them a gift. And we will prepare their grave. June, Miho, Subin, let's go. We have a lot of work to do before sunset. The bunker, which had felt like a tomb moments before, suddenly buzzed with activity. People moved with purpose. The plan was terrifying. It was insane, but it was a plan. Una looked back at the geological map, her finger tracing the path to the deep, unstable chamber at the heart of the cave system. It was marked on the file with a single, plain label. It was called the Maw. The second sunrise on Taurus 3 was cold and silent. No mining drills hummed. No voices called across the yard. The colony of New Tegu looked dead, its windows dark. Only the alien war barge, squatting on the edge of the landing field, gave off a low, threatening energy. Inside the bunker, the air was thick with tension. The work of the long night was done. Modified lights and sonic emitters were hidden near the cave entrance. Packs of lubricant were strapped to support beams high in the tunnels. Two small, battered mining drones sat on a charging pad, little blocks of mining explosives taped to their undersides. They looked like toys. Una hoped they would be enough. It's time, Una said, breaking the quiet. She looked at her brother. You know what to say. Kim Jun swallowed hard and nodded. He was not a fighter. The thought of walking up to the giant, wolf-like alien made his stomach twist. But he understood the plan. He was the best choice. He looked like no threat at all. Remember, Una said, her hand on his arm. You are afraid. You are surrendering. You are giving him exactly what he wants to see. June took a deep breath and straightened his lab coat. With him were two older colonists, their faces etched with genuine fear. They carried no weapons. They pushed a single gravcart loaded with crates of the dense, gray nutrient blocks, the terrible-tasting food meant for the recyclers. The walk from the bunker hatch to the alien-occupied storage building felt like the longest journey of June's life. The morning light was weak. He could see the hulking shapes of the Kellerax moving around the entrance of the large prefab building. One of them spotted them and let out a sharp, barking growl. Others appeared, weapons held ready. The Alpha Gorak stepped out. He looked even bigger in the daylight. His yellow eyes tracked June's approach with cold interest. June stopped a safe distance away, his hands clearly visible. He could feel his heart beating in his throat. He forced himself to look down, to hunch his shoulders. The translator band around Gorak's neck glowed. We have come to submit," June said, his voice shaky. It was not hard to fake. "We offer you our food stores, as a sign of good faith. Please, do not hurt anyone." Gorak took a slow step forward. He leaned down, his hot breath fogging in the cool air. He sniffed, his wet nose inches from June's face. June flinched, a movement that was completely real. "You are not the female," the translator snarled. "And no," June stammered. "My sister. She is shamed. She hides. I am in charge of the food, the life support. I am a scientist. We wish to live. We will work." He gestured weakly to the grav cart. "This is from our main storage. It is yours. There is more inside the building, and—" He paused, glancing nervously toward the dark, jagged opening of the silica caves right next to the building. "The building is strong, safe. It connects to some natural shelters in the rock, for protection from the dust storms." Gorak's eyes narrowed. He looked from June's frightened face to the crates, then to the cave entrance. He stomped over to the grav cart and ripped a crate open. He pulled out a hard, gray block, sniffed it, and took a bite. His muzzle wrinkled in disgust, and he spat it out. "This is trash. The food of weaklings." "It is what we have," June pleaded. "We are not rich. We are just miners. The building is warm. The caves are dry. Better than your ship. Please, take it." Gorak stared at him for a long, tense moment. He was suspicious. This was too easy. But his scouts had scanned the area. They had detected no energy weapons, no hidden troops. The humans were hiding in their hole in the ground, shaking. This one in front of him smelled of sweat and terror. It was the correct smell. The female's defiance had been a fluke, a last spark before the darkness. He saw the logic. The storage building was the most defensible structure. The attached caves would provide extra room for his pack, a place to rest off-ship. It was not a gift. It was the rightful claim of the stronger. They were not giving it. He was taking it from their trembling hands. A low rumble of a laugh came from his chest. "You are wiser than the female," the translator said. "Your fear is honest. You will live. For now. You will bring more of this food every day." He turned to his pack and barked a series of guttural commands. The Kellerax moved forward, shoving June and the others aside. They began hauling the crates into the building. Others, curious, prowled toward the dark cave entrance, shining light beams inside. June backed away, his part done. He felt a wave of shame so strong it almost made him sick. He had bowed and scraped. He had fed the beast. But as he turned to hurry back to the bunker, he saw what Yuna had predicted. The aliens were not just taking the building. They were exploring the cave. A younger, eager Kellerax let out a short howl of discovery from inside the tunnel, the sound echoing in the hollow space. It was claiming a new den. Gorak watched, satisfied. He stood in the doorway of the human building, master of all he surveyed. He had their food. He had their best shelter. Their spirit was broken. The female would kneel soon enough or she would die. He had no idea he was walking into a throat. And the humans, it seemed, were politely holding the door open for him. Back in the bunker, Yuna watched the feed from a hidden camera near the greenhouse. She saw her brother retreat. She saw the first aliens enter the silica caves. She let out a slow breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Phase 1 is done," she said quietly to Miho and Subin, who stood beside her. "They are in the cage. Now we start to close the door." She looked at the screen, At the last glimpse of Gorak's proud, broad back as he disappeared into the human building. Her face was stone. Let the geology begin. Night fell on Taurus 3. For the Kellorax pack in the storage building and the connected caves, it was supposed to be a time of rest and dominance. They had eaten the terrible human food, but it was fuel. They had a secure den. The humans were hiding. It was a good first day of conquest. But the caves did not like them. It started with the sound. A low, deep hum that seemed to come from the rock itself. It was not loud to human ears. To the Kellorax, with their sensitive hearing tuned for the rustle of prey in dense forests, it was a different story. The frequency, designed by Kim Jun, drilled into their ears. It was a constant, nagging buzz that vibrated in their teeth and settled behind their eyes. There was no escaping it. It filled the tunnels. Gorak, asleep in the corner of the storage building, woke with a growl. His head throbbed. "Find that noise!" He snarled at two of his pack. They moved into the cave entrance, their shoulder lamps cutting beams through the darkness. The hum was worse inside. They followed it to a cluster of small, glowing boxes tucked high in a crevice. One of them smashed it with his claw. The box broke, but the hum from deeper in the caves continued. There were many boxes. Then came the slipping. The Kellorax were heavy, powerful creatures. They were sure-footed on the rocky plains of their home world. The floors of the silica caves were smooth in places, polished by ancient water. And now, they were secretly coated in a fine, clear mist of industrial lubricant, sprayed remotely from hidden packs. A scout named Rock, on patrol deep in a side tunnel, took a confident step. His foot, with its thick pads, slid out from under him as if on ice. He crashed down with a yelp of surprise, his weapon clattering across the stone. The sound echoed through the caves, followed by the snarling laughter of his pack brothers. But the laughter died quickly. It happened again and again. A simple walk became a careful, tense shuffle. Their pride, their powerful stride was made foolish. It was humiliating. The final insult was the rock. It began to talk back. A patrol was moving through a narrower tunnel when a small, wheeled machine, one of the old mining drones, zipped out of a side passage. It beeped once, a silly sound, and sped between the legs of a startled Kellorax before disappearing into another hole. They roared and gave chase. As they rounded a bend, the drone stopped. A small charge on its underside detonated. It was not a big explosion. It was a pop, but it was not meant to hurt them. It was meant to hurt the ceiling. A web of cracks shot through the brittle silica above them. A shower of sharp, crystalline dust and small rocks rained down, choking and cutting them. No one was badly hurt, but they were forced to retreat, coughing and blinded. They felt hunted, not by soldiers but by the very ground they stood on. Gorak stormed through the caves, his head pounding from the endless hum. He saw his pack members uneasy, shuffling, jumping at shadows. He saw the fresh scratches on their fur from the falling crystal dust. This was not warfare. This was irritation. It was the work of pests. "These are tricks," he bellowed, his voice echoing. "The tricks of weak things who are afraid to face us. They think to annoy us? We will tear their burrow apart." But his words sounded hollow in the humming, treacherous dark. His pack obeyed, but their confidence was cracked. The caves were no longer a good den. They felt like a living thing that was slowly turning against them. Back in the bunker, the humans watched on grainy monitors. They saw the aliens slip. They saw them flinch from the falling dust. They saw Gorak's furious pacing. A low murmur, not of joy, but of grim satisfaction, went through the room. The plan was working. Choi Subin guided her second drone, its camera showing a shaky view of a deep cave chamber. "They are all pulling back toward the main building," she reported. "They are staying out of the deep tunnels now." "Good," Yuna said. She was studying the main map. The red dot marking the maw glowed in the deepest part of the network. "They are learning to fear the dark. But he is still angry. He is not broken. Not yet." Park Miho watched a screen showing the cave entrance. "He will want to end this, to finish it. This will make him reckless. That is what we need, Una said quietly. Her finger rested on the map, right on the path that led from the storage building to the heart of the caves. Right now he is annoyed. We need him to be furious. We need him to be blind with the need to crush us himself. She looked up at the tired, hopeful faces around her. They had done well. The Earth was fighting for them. But the hardest part was coming. They had to offer the Alpha a target he could not resist. They had to give him the one thing he wanted most. They had to give him her. Dawn brought no peace. The constant, mind-eating hum in the caves was now part of the air. The Kellerax pack was tired and angry. Their yellow eyes were clouded with pain from the sound and the frustration of a fight they could not grasp. They snapped at each other in the dark. The storage building, once a prize, now felt like a trap with a buzzing, slippery entrance. Gorak stood at the cave mouth, staring out at the silent human colony. His head throbbed in time with the hidden emitters. His pride was a raw wound. These soft, small creatures were not fighting. They were insulting him. They were making his strength look clumsy and stupid. He needed to break something. He needed to feel bones snap under his hands. He needed the female. His thoughts were a red haze of rage when a movement caught his eye. Near the broken mining lift, a figure darted from behind a pile of scrap metal. It was her. The female. Una. She was moving quickly, but not toward the bunker. She was heading along the colony's perimeter, toward the rocky bluffs at the edge of the settlement. She looked like she was checking something, a routine patrol. She did not look afraid. She looked focused. To Gorak it was the final, unforgivable insult. She was ignoring him, living her life as if he were not her conqueror. A deep, rumbling growl started in his chest and boiled out into a roar that overpowered the hum. He did not think. He gave a single command to his pack, "Follow," and then he launched himself forward. He did not run with strategy. He ran with pure, predatory fury. His powerful legs drove him across the open ground, claws tearing up the gravel. He saw Una glance over her shoulder. He saw her eyes go wide, not with the fear he wanted, but with something else. Calculation. Then she ran. She did not run like prey, not exactly. She did not scream or cry. She ran with purpose, leading him on a specific path. But Gorak, in his rage, saw only her retreat. He saw her heading toward the cliff face where the silica caves had their main, gaping entrance. She was running back to her tricks. She thought the dark would save her. He would follow her into the deepest black. He would drag her out by her hair and make every human watch as he broke her. Una's heart hammered against her ribs. The sound of his charge was like an avalanche behind her. She could smell him, a musky, hot animal smell. She forced her legs to move, following the precise route she had memorized. Past the marked rock, skirt the unstable patch of ground, into the shadow of the cliff. She vanished into the cave entrance. The darkness swallowed her. Gorak did not slow. He plunged in after her, his pack streaming behind him. The hated hum was louder here, a physical pressure in his skull. But he pushed through it, his eyes adjusting to the gloom. He saw a flash of her dark jacket disappearing around a bend in the crystalline tunnel. "She goes deeper," one of his pack barked, his voice tense. "Good," Gorak snarled. "We end this in the belly of her hole. Chase her. Cut off her escape." The pack moved forward, but their confidence was gone. The floors were slick. The strange, sharp rock loomed everywhere. They moved slower, more carefully. The gap between Gorak, driven by rage, and the rest of his pack began to grow. Una knew the caves. She knew where to place her feet on the dry, rough patches. She knew which turns to take, which narrow passages to squeeze through. She led Gorak on a winding chase, deeper and deeper. The air grew colder. The only sounds were the hum, the distant snarls of the pack, and the heavy, echoing breath of the Alpha right behind her. She came to a place where the tunnel forked. One path sloped upward. The other dropped down into impenetrable darkness. She took the downward path. It was the path marked in red on the survey map. The path to the maw. Gorak skidded to a halt at the fork. He sniffed the air. He could smell her, fresh, going down. He looked back. His pack was lagging, struggling in the difficult terrain. He did not wait for them. This was his kill. His victory. Spread out. Find the other humans. He roared back at them, his voice echoing. He did not want them sharing this moment. He wanted her alone. He turned and bounded down the sloping tunnel after Yuna. The passage narrowed. The ceiling got lower. He had to hunch his massive shoulders. The hum here was different, deeper, mixed with the groan of the living rock. He was in the guts of the moon now. Up ahead he saw light. Not artificial light, but a faint, gray glow from a larger space. The tunnel opened up. He burst out into a vast cavern, a cathedral of jagged, glittering silica. And there, in the center, trapped with her back to a wall of crystal, was Li Yuna. She had nowhere left to run. Gorak straightened up, filling the entrance. His lips pulled back from his teeth in a triumphant snarl. The hunt was over. The cavern was immense. Stalactites of pure, sharp silica hung from the ceiling like monstrous teeth. The floor was a chaotic field of broken crystal and deep cracks. The gray light filtered from a single, narrow fissure high above. In the center of it all, Li Yuna stood still. She was not breathing hard. She simply watched as Gorak stepped fully into the chamber. He was huge in the confined space. His fur bristled. His yellow eyes glowed with victory in the dim light. He looked around, his predator's mind checking for other exits, for tricks. He saw none. The female was cornered. The cavern had only one way in, the tunnel behind him. It was a perfect killing box. He took a step forward. His clawed foot crunched on the crystalline debris. The sound echoed, joined by a low, deep groan from the earth itself. The entire cavern seemed to breathe. "You run well for a weak thing," Gorak's translator snarled, the voice bouncing off the walls. "But you are out of holes to hide in." Yuna said nothing. She didn't look at the exit. She looked at the walls, at the ceiling, at the specific hairline cracks that laced the chamber like a spider's web. Her face was calm, a mask of cold acceptance. "This ends now," Gorak said, taking another step. "On your knees. Beg for a quick death. It is the only mercy you will find here." Finally, Yuna looked at him, and she laughed. It was a quiet sound, but it cut through the groans of the rock and the distant, hated hum. It was not a laugh of joy or of madness. It was a laugh of pure, contemptuous understanding. The sound made Gorak hesitate for a fraction of a second. "I told you," Yuna said, her voice clear and steady in the vast space. "The first day in the plaza. I told you what I do." Gorak remembered. The words from the translator band. The defiance. A new kind of rage, cold and sharp, mixed with his hot bloodlust. He bellowed, the sound crashing through the cavern. "Kneel. Your tricks end here, weakling." Yuna's smile vanished. Her eyes hardened into chips of flint. She looked past him, as if seeing the ghosts of her colony, her brother, the children. Then her gaze locked back on him, and there was nothing human in it. It was the look of the moon itself. Pitiless, patient, geological. "I only kneel," she said, each word a drop of ice. "To bury you." Her hand moved to her wrist. A simple, small movement. She tapped a single button on her wristcom. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the cavern woke up. The charges, placed by Subin's drones days before, did not explode outward with fire and shrapnel. They were small, shaped charges, glued to key support pillars and the weakest points in the cavern's brittle skin. They imploded. The sound was a series of deep, wet thumps that felt more than heard. The pillars, already strained, shattered. The hairline cracks in the walls and ceiling yawned open with a scream of tearing rock. Gorak's triumph turned to confusion, then to dawning, primal terror. This was not an attack aimed at him. It was an attack aimed at the world beneath his feet. The floor, a fragile crust over a vast emptiness, gave way. It didn't collapse in one piece. It dissolved. A great section of the crystalline floor, directly between Yuna and Gorak, simply vanished into a roaring, black void. A cloud of blinding silica dust exploded upward. The roar was deafening, the sound of the mountain eating itself. Gorak stumbled back as the ground in front of him disappeared. He saw Yuna, still standing on her side of the new, yawning edge, watching him. Then he was falling. Not into the pit but with the pit. The entire entrance side of the cavern, where he stood, was shearing away, sliding down into the abyss. He roared again, but this time it was a sound of fury and fear, swallowed by the grinding rock. He scrambled, his claws scrabbling for purchase on the disintegrating floor. A chunk of rock hit his shoulder. The world turned into a violent, tumbling nightmare of noise, dust, and falling stone. Back in the tunnel entrance, the first of his pack arriving saw the cavern disintegrate. They saw their alpha, a massive dark shape, vanish into the crashing, roaring darkness. They heard the final, thunderous crash as millions of tons of silica settled far below. Then silence. A deep, dusty, ringing silence. The floor stopped shaking. The dust slowly began to settle. The chamber was halved. Where Gorak had stood was now a sheer, jagged cliff edge, dropping away into an unimaginable black depth. A few last crystals tinkled as they fell into the void. On the other side, standing at the new edge of the world, was Yuna. She was coated in fine white dust, like a ghost. She peered over the precipice into the darkness where the alpha beast had fallen. There was no movement, no sound. She had not fought him. She had judged him, and she had sentenced him to the deep, dark rock. The dust took a long time to settle. In the new, broken silence of the great cavern, the only sound was the faint groan of settling rock. Yuna stood at the edge of the vast sinkhole, a pale statue in the gray light. She looked down into the darkness for a full minute, waiting. Nothing moved. No sound came up from the deep. She did not feel like a victor. She felt tired and very old. The rock dust itched on her skin. She turned her back on the pit and walked to the solid wall where she had been standing. She pressed her hand against a rough crystal seam. A small, hidden panel slid open, revealing a narrow service tunnel, an old surveyor's escape route, not on any general map. She slipped inside and began the long, dark climb back up. Meanwhile, chaos had taken the Kellorax pack. They had seen the cavern die. They had heard their alpha's final roar swallowed by the mountain. The heart of their strength was gone, buried under a world of stone. The humming in the caves, which had been an annoyance, now felt like the angry breath of a planet that had just eaten their leader. They stumbled back through the slippery, humming tunnels in a panic. They were not a unit anymore. They were just scared animals in a wrong, hateful place. When they burst out of the cave entrance into the daylight, they did not form up. They huddled, their eyes wide, looking at the silent colony with new fear. From the bunker, Park Miho watched on the monitors. He saw their confusion. He saw their fear. He gave the order. All across New Tegu, doors slid open. Not with a military sound, but with the industrial hiss of hydraulics. The colonists did not march out. They simply appeared. They stood on walkways, in doorways, on the steps of the bunker. They were not armed with rifles. They held mining lasers, heavy wrench tools, and the sharp, hooked poles used for moving drilling equipment. They stood silently, their faces hard and dirty from a day underground preparing their home's defense. They did not advance. They just stood, and they stared. The message was clear. The cave was not the only thing that would fight back. The Kellorax looked at these small, silent humans. They saw no fear in their eyes now. They saw only a cold, patient will. The will that had made the ground itself an enemy. One of the pack, a younger male, let out a low whine. The sound broke the last of their spirit. They did not try to fight. They did not try to burn the colony. They turned and ran. They ran back to their jagged ship on the landing field. They scrambled inside. The engines fired with a terrible scream, and the ship lifted into the sky, trailing smoke and shame. It became a dark spot, then vanished into the clouds. A quiet cheer started among the colonists, but it died quickly. It did not feel like a thing to cheer. Felt like a storm had passed. They lowered their tools. Yuna emerged from a maintenance hatch near the greenhouse, blinking in the light. She was covered in fine white dust from head to toe. Kim Jun saw her first and ran to her. He grabbed her shoulders, his eyes searching hers, full of questions he could not ask. "It's done," she said, her voice hoarse from the dust. "He's in the deep rock." June just pulled her into a tight hug. He could feel her trembling, not from fear, but from exhaustion. By evening, the sun was a dull orange smudge on the horizon. The air was clearing. Yuna stood at the edge of the colony, looking at the new, gaping scar in the cliff face, the entrance to the silica caves now partially collapsed. It would need to be sealed forever. Park Miho walked up and stood beside her. "Not a single shot fired from a gun," he said, his voice full of wonder. "We didn't have guns that could hurt them," Yuna replied quietly. "We only had our home, and they were too stupid to know the difference." She turned her back on the cave. She looked at New Tegu. The lights were coming on in the habitats. People were moving slowly, checking on neighbors, starting the long work of cleaning up. The broken lift was a dark skeleton against the sky. It would be repaired. Life would continue. It would be harder, and they would remember the shadow of the beast. But they were still here. June brought her a canteen of water. She took it and drank deeply, washing the taste of stone from her mouth. There was no triumph on her face, only the grim satisfaction of a person who has done a terrible, necessary job. A gardener who had removed a blight. A miner who had stabilized a dangerous shaft. The colony was scarred, but it was home, and it was still standing.